Hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host this evening. My name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, we chatted about food additives and filler, and why all we Americans are such fat, wilting, and unhealthy, and yet still very hungry pigs. Why we continue to eat so much, and why we continue to starve our bodies to death. At least we hope that in the end, death will actually finally find us, the real death, not this lingering around for decades in agony, filled with chemical food colorings, our bodies preserved by plastic food filler and artificial sweeteners that burn our guts out. Tonight I thought we would chat about what one of our master's plans are for controlling us even further. Should we get it into our heads to actually stand up on our hind legs and act like, men and women, like human beings? Personally, I'm not really worried because our masters remember the French Revolution of 1799 like it was yesterday. That was when the French people, and I love French people, rose up against their masters, the aristocracy, and started cutting their heads off. I have it on good authority from one of the masters themselves, a fellow I used to know. He told me that the French Revolution is so alive in the minds of our masters that they live in daily constant fear of us, and of us, chopping off their heads. My friend assured me that only the chopping off of their heads would actually stop his people, our masters, from carrying out all of their plans against us. But again, there just aren't enough French people in the world to stop what is happening today, and Lord knows I wish there were. Personally, if I knew anyone in France, I'd move there today, just to be around people who still remember what it is to be a human being. Anyway, one of the numerous plans in the background for us, in the event we do remember that we are human beings, involves something so frankly bizarre that I've really hesitated to even mention it before. It involves a very old technology, something called Project Bluebeam. Now, Project Bluebeam, and all of these death ray kind of Frankenstein monsters projects that our masters dream up always begin with the word project. I guess it makes them feel important or special. Anyway, Project Bluebeam is a holographic projector. It's been around for 30 years or so. It works really great, and it's so powerful it can project seemingly solid three-dimensional images in the sky. A few years back, they were running tests with Project Bluebeam in Europe. They were trying to convince people that the Virgin Mary was appearing in the sky above their villages. And I'm sure they were, doing psychological evaluations on the effectiveness of this kind of technology. Well, Project Bluebeam is only one of several plans they have available to them. There's always Dick Cheney's fallback plan to nuke an American city in the event that it looked like Little King George. And if you're keeping track of our British masters, the last George Bush would be George V. George III was in power when the 13 original colonies theoretically gained freedom. George IV is, of course, old George Bush from a few years ago, head of the CIA. For many years, he actually, his proper nickname is Magog, when you think about our masters in their own little world. He's actually the fellow who is personally responsible for opening up all the drug trade between Asia and the United States and what's keeping the major corporations going nowadays. If you ever wonder how a major corporation can be so idiotic and ridiculous and stupid and still be in business and still make a profit, they're in the drug business with their partners, the bankers. Anyway, Dick Cheney, his plan to keep little George Bush, George V, in power in his fake presidency was, as I say, to nuke an American city, thus giving us martial law and giving the corporations complete and absolute military control of us. That's why they've been staging, the military in the United States has been staging urban pacification maneuvers in places like Palm Desert, where there was 10,000 troops, American troops, practicing how to, contain us. Now, a very kind soul, Haley2508 here at YouTube, very kindly pointed out in the last version of this video. This is actually the third or fourth incarnation of this particular episode. I just keep screwing it up. She pointed out that I made some basic mistakes, and we'll get to that in a minute. So either of these plans, the fake alien invasion of the United States or dropping a nuclear bomb on an American city, would of course give the government supreme power, absolute power over the American people. Well, I don't know if I can say luckily for us, Dick Cheney never got his way. They never did drop directly a nuclear bomb on an American city. But they did get to test some of their better hardware on downtown New York on September 11th a few years ago. And this is where Haley2508 here at YouTube came to my rescue and stopped me from looking like a complete idiot. I mentioned that our masters are very big into black magic. They worship their god, Satan. Whether you believe in Satan or not, doesn't matter. They do. Black magic is based on ritual. And these rituals are always based around numbers, days, dates, that sort of thing. And I had mentioned in the previous incarnation of this particular video that 9/11 is a very important number in the United States because when you have an emergency at home, you run to the phone, you pick up the phone, and you dial 911. You dial 9/11. I had at that point failed to mention the black magic's dependence on numerology, numbers, because 9/11, if you go back in American history on the date 9/11, September 11th, through American history, you will find every few years, I forget the number of years, horrible massacres, terrible tragedies where innocent people are slaughtered on September 11th, because in black magic that particular date has significance. What it is, no idea. I had mentioned that in England they had staged a similar false flag operation. Now, a false flag operation is where your country's military puts on the uniform of the enemy, commits atrocities against your own people, and because they're wearing the uniform of the enemy, you think the enemy did it. Therefore, politicians can basically maneuver us into doing anything we want. It's a false flag operation, which is what 9/11 was. They did something similar in England on the date 7/7/7, and this is where Haley2508 caught me. I had confused the emergency number in England with 777, the date, with, I thought that was the emergency number they called. I had forgotten in England it's 999. 777 is another important date in numerology, in black magic, where you have to sacrifice the innocent. And so the 777 attack in London against the people of England was yet another false flag attack in black magic ritual on a specific day. That day specifically is important in numerology. Again, what the date exactly specifies, I have no idea, except that the innocent must die. What September 11th, the false flag operation here in New York City did, it did what it was supposed to do. For one thing, it terrified Congress, which frankly ain't that hard, into passing the Patriot Act, trying to get our weapons away from us. And since there are 300 million Americans and most of us have guns, that's the only thing that has stopped complete takeover of the United States. The masters also wanted to make their servants, their slaves, what I call the Mandarin class, those who directly serve them, makes them lots of money. The Bush family, you can call them the Mandarin class. They are servants. Dick Cheney is a servant of a servant, below the Mandarin class. For example, one fellow had leased the Twin Tower buildings just before the false flag attack. He took out an insurance policy on them. After those buildings were brought down with backpack mini nukes, he made a lot of money. He made a lot of money on a couple of old buildings that were so filled with asbestos anyway and were falling apart anyway. It would have cost several small fortunes to bring them down, well, at least legally. It's amazing how many people made money on 9/11, the servants of the masters. It's really amazing what a stealth flying craft and a collection of well-placed backpack mini nukes can do to solid steel and concrete anyway. A backpack mini nuke can melt steel into puddles that stay molten for weeks. A backpack mini nuke can turn concrete into powder. Backpack mini nuke, that's a really good one to look up. I have a video somewhere, a U.S. Navy training film demonstrating how a Navy SEAL carried a backpack mini nuke from a submarine offshore onto the beach and placed it. A backpack mini nuke was used at Indonesia a few years ago to make a point, political point. It was used in Oklahoma City quite effectively, I'm told. And it was used very effectively in 9/11 in the false flag attack. It's also probably why Geiger counters are banned in Manhattan. And you can, in fact, go to a federal prison if any cop finds you with a Geiger counter in New York City, anywhere in Manhattan, anywhere near the monument. Might have something to do with the fact that a backpack mini nuke gives off horrific amounts of radiation and soaked New York and New Yorkers when those backpack mini nukes brought down the Twin Towers. What about the alien invasion? Can you imagine what people would do when they saw motherships over every major city in the United States? The cattle? Probably nothing. You know, we've had 2 major movies and 2 major television series about this exact same thing. My guess is that the cattle will not even notice. And that's maybe why the alien invasion has never been staged, at least, not on a nationwide scale. Now, you have to remember, the masters hire scientists, mad scientists, and employ them to create all kinds of disgusting hybrid creatures because, you see, the masters are trying to recreate the Christian apocalypse from their Bible. What Bible? Who the heck knows anymore? Now, part of the Christian apocalypse is, of course, a massive war in the Middle East, and it also requires demons. So what's better demonish than if you take deformed and tortured creatures that you have combined from other natural living things and let them run loose around. Look up the word, for example, another good research word, chupacabra. Chupacabra. Look up chupacabra. This is one of these disgusting and sad and sick hybrid creatures that the mad scientists who work for our masters have created for them. And please always remember something really important. The scientists who work for the masters, not all scientists and not all doctors graduate in the top of their class. They don't graduate in the top 50% of their class. Most scientists do not graduate in the top 95% of their class. But they still have bills to pay, they have families to feed. And when our masters hire them, they're not likely to ask too many questions. So my advice on this one, well, what would I recommend you do if you happen to see giant motherships hovering over your city? Do not go out and greet them warmly. Do not wave flags from the top of tall buildings, and for the love of God, don't hold a party. Grab your family, food, water, supplies, cats, dogs, children, birds, those extra cans of gasoline you should have in your garage by now. All of the stuff you should have packed and ready to go at a moment's notice. And please don't forget the sleeping pills. And what's really, really important, and it sounds silly, get yourself a very large roll of very heavy-duty, very large, very black plastic bags. Black plastic bags in an emergency will save your life. You'll discover why, unfortunately. Get all this stuff, throw it in the car, get on the highway before anyone else does, and you drive. And you keep driving until you're high in the mountains, and then you hide. Because I guarantee you that if our masters feel that threatened by us, and they use Project Bluebeam to convince us that aliens have landed, that means that their mad scientists have created something that will pass as an alien. And I guarantee you that is something that you do not want to meet. Us, we have plans. It involves mountains, caves, South America, and really, really big, thick concrete doors. But that's our plan. And I really hope you have one of your own, too. If you don't, give us a call. Maybe we can work something out. For all of us here at the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk, wishing you a really good day and reminding you to please keep a good thought.